Welcome to the Giving Room with Dave and David, where we encourage remarkable generosity, from amazing stories to easy to understand discussions about tools for giving that may just be right for you.
Hey, welcome to the Giving Room. I'm Dave.
I'm David.
And we are thrilled to have a special guest returning again with us. This is Chris Lightfoot from the National Christian Foundation.
Thanks, guys. Good to be back. Yeah, we are so glad to have you again, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is like the second time.
So today we're going to kind of do a ministry spotlight. We're going to kind of dive into what the National Christian Foundation is and potentially why you should consider working with them in your charitable giving. So I'm really excited to kind of dive into that. But before we do that, I wanted to kind of talk to you, Chris, a little bit. Tell us your story. How did you get there? Give us some background on you.
Yeah, this is the Chris Lightfoot story. Like, how did we get to this chair?
Happy to share. I think man plans his steps, but God lays out the path. Is that I just really butchered that verse, but it's something along those lines. And what I've seen is stepping stones that have gotten me to where I am today. So I'll share a little bit of that, try to be clear and concise and direct in the way I do that. The short story is I got into financial planning, really enjoyed working with clients, enjoyed that space, but found that I had a real passion for generosity and went through a Chip Ingram program that's actually facilitated here locally called Prime Movers, a 6-month kind of faith-based executive coaching program. I got to month 5 of that program where we're supposed to write a business plan. I wrote it in the context of the financial planning firm that I was with at that time. And to a man, the 8 guys around the table with me in that small group said, that doesn't fit. God has designed your core in such a way, you know your capacity, but your context doesn't work. You need to go rethink that. And I didn't know where to go from there. So literally, I went out to my car and prayed for a few minutes and was thinking about how do I rewrite this entire business plan? And I guess I need to make a change from Edward Jones, but I don't know what that looks like. And opened up my phone to navigate home and realized I had an email from NCF saying, hey, we're looking to grow the team in Ohio. And so I self-nominated and 4.5 years later, here we are. So it's been a wonderful change to be able to lean into, I think, the calling that God had on my life of go inspire biblical generosity and help people mobilize the resources they've been entrusted for kingdom impact. And that's what we're doing on a daily basis.
Yeah, so how does your day look? What's a typical Chris Lightfoot day look like now versus when you were...
You know what? We get to have a lot of the same conversations, just pared down from all the different things you have to talk about as a financial planner. Now we just get to focus on the generosity and the charitable giving. And so we like to say that we work with a lot of different families, have conversations with a lot of different individuals. Many of those, maybe even most of those, have some sort of a financial strategy already in place. But what we find is that many, maybe even most, don't have any sort of a giving strategy in place. And so we're able to step in as these creative giving strategists and have conversations with these individuals about, hey, here's the financial strategy you've got set up. But because we don't have a giving strategy in place, we end up missing a lot of opportunities and wasting a lot of money on taxes. And we can help you reach some of the goals that you want to reach charitably by simply implementing some strategies that might be of benefit. So it's a lot of fun. We get to have the same planning type mentality and conversation, just focused on the charitable giving concepts. So
awesome.
Well, and then it sounds like even when you were in the context of Edward Jones, like you were definitely there to serve people.
Very much.
But is it almost like there's more of a ministry? Can we say it's a ministry, or is it still this? I don't know. Which hat do you feel like you're wearing?
No, that's a good question.
How would you describe it?
Yeah, so we actually like to say that we are a ministry operating on a business platform. Right. So what does that mean? Let me unpack that for a second. We are a ministry in the sense of the mission statement is to mobilize resources by inspiring biblical generosity.
And that's NCF's
mission statement. Yeah. Exactly right. Yeah. So mobilize resources by inspiring biblical generosity. I think that middle word of by is really important because we lead with how do we go inspire biblical generosity? How do we educate? How do we equip? How do we disciple? That's the ministry work that we do on a daily basis. And the natural result of that ministry work is the transaction piece, the mobilization of the resources piece. Because as people start to understand the things that they could do to be better stewards with what they've been entrusted and to leverage everything they've been entrusted for generosity, all of a sudden they get excited about implementing some of those. And that's then where the business platform comes in. We really have to be excellent in the work that we're doing, in the advice that we're giving, in the strategies and solutions that we're presenting, because these have eternal ramifications, and we take that pretty seriously. So when I say we're a ministry on a business platform, we want to operate with excellence in everything that we do, but we do it with a heart of ministry. So that's kind of the approach that we bring and the mentality that we bring.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I think something that I learned this years ago. Someone made the comment that giving or generosity is a learned skill. It's not something that, I mean, we all know generous people where like giving is their spiritual gift. Like they just, but for most of us, we're naturally sinners and stingy. I mean, that's right. And so one of the things that, as you talk about, how can the National Christian Foundation be a ministry? Like they're probably one of the best educational tools to help teach you how to be more generous and the strategies and resources and tools to do that. And it's a learned skill to help you grow. And we know biblically, giving is a command in Scripture. It is something we are supposed to do, and it is something that most of us are not good at. We need to grow in that. So as you talk about that, the idea of a financial planner for my generosity is awesome. And it's absolutely such a huge need, and it will not only help you, it'll help you grow in your faith and help you grow in that as well. So when you ask, is it ministry? I mean, sorry, I just was excited about what you had to say there.
I mean, and you may have been one of the exceptions when you were with Edward Jones, but in your experience, do you find that it's a supernatural? That's odd. Is it very natural for like a legal advisor or other financial professional advisor or accountant to be talking about like generosity, especially from a Christian perspective or a theology? Like, are those conversations happening in mass, you think, out there in the world, but for somebody like?
That's a great question, and I appreciate the opportunity to address it, because I think there's a lot of misconception around that. I think a lot of people believe that their CPA or their financial advisor or their estate planning attorney will bring these things up if they make sense. And if they don't bring them up, they must not make sense and we won't explore them. But the fact of the matter is, coming from that industry, and it's not for lack of integrity most of the time. It's just the advisors aren't trained in those spaces. They just don't get the equipping that they would need in order to have really helpful conversations with the client around these types of strategies. So if they don't intentionally focus and spend their own time self-educating in these areas, they're probably not going to bring these solutions to their clients because they just don't know it. And that's no fault of the advisor.
Right.
It's just the industries that they're in, whether it's CPA or attorney or financial advisor, typically are not incentivized by, hey, go out and help people give money away, right? That's just not what they're paid to do.
Well, so, I think to even build onto that, sorry, I mean, I remember talking to a supporter of the river, and he's a business owner, successfully financially, and he was telling me, he's like, every circle I'm in the business space and in the financial, all of the guys' dreams is to buy a house in Florida and play golf someday. And all of their financial strategy is built around making that dream come true, to retire, move to Florida, and play golf for the rest of their life, right? So if you're a financial planner, that's going to be to the end that you're going to coach someone. I mean, would you agree with that? That's kind of obviously there's context beyond that. Maybe someone wants to move to California instead, but
I don't like golf.
But I mean, for him, and that was, as I thought about that context, right? That's the majority of the context that the average American is looking for.
Well, we're just going to have a memory lane moment here. So just bear with us. This was a really long time ago, and you can be honest if you don't remember. So you were with me.
Yeah.
Goodness, it had to be maybe 10 years ago. And I actually got to speak to a group of lawyers. It was the Christian Legal Society. And we were talking about the amount of times that they have opportunity to advise their clients on these things. And it's always less than, and even a group of Christian attorneys are almost embarrassed with how not often, they do this. Right. And I remember we actually said, it's until this moment, because now you're going to be equipped and it's going to be your fault, but it's like not your fault, right? Because the system and the industry and even the educational platform that you came out of was all about how to help your clients build bigger barns, right?
Yes.
and how to protect their barns and how to, get the next barn.
Yep.
No one, like in law school, we didn't talk about how to give a barn away. Like nobody, we talked about how to sell a barn, how to build the next one, but nobody talked about how to give a barn away, right?
Yep.
Like, and just to use some metaphor there,
right.
you can go find, if you want to really Google something that would be terrifying, go Google that story, right? If you build more barns and then, you die the next night.
Can't take it with you, right?
What was the purpose of that, right?
Yep.
So there's an element where it's not the advisor's fault, but I think I'm here to say it kind of is, right? If you're in the Christian space, but super thankful that there's guys and gals like you running around and actually all across the country, right? And I think maybe this is the transition to that. So NCF, you're with the Ohio office here in Columbus, Ohio, where we're sitting.
Correct. Yep.
But NCF is not just an Ohio thing. So
Right.
what is
National
National Christian Foundation is national.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. We've got barn dismantlers. That's what our president at NCF Ohio, Dwight Montgomery, is also a former financial advisor. And we like to say we were in the barn building business. We're now in the barn dismantling business.
That's fantastic. And I didn't know that. That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
That's awesome.
We use that on a regular basis. So National Christian Foundation, home office in Atlanta, Georgia. That's really where the backbone of the entity is, right? All of our contributions team is there. Grants team is there. Our gift planning, due diligence, tax, and general counsel attorneys are all there. So that's our home office team. But NCF as a national entity has 39 offices around the country, and we are just the Ohio office that services primarily givers in Ohio, although Dwight and I both travel nationally and speak for different ministries at different events and work with their donors if they want to implement some different strategies. So we have donors around the country, but really the structure is set up so that you've got a local presence that serves those local givers and really is able to build a community of generous givers that starts to get exciting when you're a part of it. It really is fun to have a couple of events a year where we're bringing that community together and just encouraging one another in what God has called us to do and how He has called us to lean into our stewardship role. He's the owner, right? We're not. We're just the stewards of what He's entrusted to us. But how do we do that really, really well? And coming back even to your point, David, on the generosity side, what's fun about that is it's a learned skill, but it becomes an appetite, right? As you start to, and even think about this from our spiritual growth on a daily basis, if I'm in the Word, I become more and more hungry for the Word.
Right.
And if I'm living in generosity, I become more and more hungry to participate and be active in generosity. And so what may start out as a learned skill becomes a passion, becomes something that somebody could say, man, this is really exciting. This is a part of my spiritual journey, is this generosity calling on my life. So
Yeah, and I think people end up realizing it's super fun, actually. Right?
So
like
fun.
It can be a lot of fun.
And to get super practical though, real quick too, in the, the NCF has this philosophy and educational resource and all this. What are some, quick examples of tools the NCF can help you with? Obviously you can go to the NCF website. What's the URL for that?
ncfgiving.com.
Okay. So you can go there, you can read all about it, you can learn a lot more there. But what are quick example? What are some stuff there that we need to know? Why should I work with the NCF and what are some tools and resources they can provide me?
Yeah, man, it's a long list, right? There are a lot of solutions. I think at the end of the day, where we try to do it, and this comes back to the planning conversation, we like to have the conversation with the giver and say, okay, what have you been entrusted? And how can we then leverage what you've been entrusted for the generosity that you want to implement?
So this is like types of assets, types of resources, like what's sort of in there.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of that might be through the donor advised fund as a tool example, right? Or the supporting organization as a tool, as an example. There are a number of things we could implement, but that's kind of the product sleeve. But let's have the conversation and figure out what tool or vehicle is going to make the most sense to be able to carry out what you've been called to do to impact the kingdom.
One example, this podcast studio was donated through NCF.
There you go.
By a supporter of this radio ministry. And one of the great things that was possible was he discovered, I can give stock. Through NCF coaching, he was able to cash in stock and donate this studio for us to be recording this right now. So this is an example of generosity through the National Christian Foundation that we are sitting in as we record this podcast.
All right, just for clarity, because you give this is one other heartburn moment.
Correct.
You give us every once in a while.
Yes, I know.
So he didn't cash in stock. He actually donated stock to NCF.
Valid.
And then
Valid.
there's a point in time when NCF.
That's why you're the attorney.
So
and
then NCF cashed in the stock.
Broadcasting degree.
And then they cut the check to 1049 The River. So that's how that happened.
Well,
correct.
Maybe,
just for clarity.
Yeah.
Maybe it's worth explaining why that's important, David, because that's and then we can in 60 seconds, just because I think that really opens up the gateway to all these other strategies. But the appreciated stock is the easy one. So when somebody they have two options, right? They've got their Apple stock, it's appreciated in value. They could sell that stock and then give the cash to the river.
Right.
When they do that, they're going to pay the capital gains tax on that stock, or they could gift those shares of stock into the donor advised fund at National Christian Foundation. Now that it's registered in the name of and owned by a 501c3, when we sell that stock, no capital gains tax, and the giver gets the fair market value deduction for that stock instead of whatever the lower cash value would have been after the capital gains tax and the cash was given. So that's a real quick
costing
strategic
them less, and they can actually give more, right?
Exactly
That's
right.
Which is sort of the magic of that.
Exactly right.
And they're made for people just like you who don't understand what you're
Correct.
no clue what the options are. So
I'm just here to run the soundboard and I'm the radio guy, not the.
And that's a simple thing. But you guys, you're like equipped for all kinds of scenarios, right? So if I'm a small business owner, there's solutions, right? Just super high level. Maybe we'll come back and.
Yep. Well, and that's why I use the stock as the example, because that's like I said, the gateway. It's the same exact. Any appreciated asset can be leveraged for generosity. So the business owner example, two ways. You could give a business prior to a sale, and then at that liquidity event, now you've got the upfront tax deduction for the fair market value of the business, and then all of the proceeds go into the donor advised fund.
The buyer funded your giving.
Exactly right.
Basically,
exactly right.
Which is fantastic.
Yep. One of the things that's really unique about NCF is this give and hold strategy, where the business continues to operate, but let's say 10% of the business was gifted to NCF. Well, now you've got 10% of the profits. We're just a charitable shareholder, just like any other shareholder in the business. So you get the upfront deduction for the 10% gift. Now you get 10% that comes right off your taxes, because that's now flowing directly through to the donor advised fund. And this is all entity dependent, right? We're not going to get into all the different types of business structures today. So it's broad brush, high level, but there's some really creative things that we can do to help a business owner or a real estate owner, or I'll give you our board chair's favorite example was a racehorse. He knew a family that had a horse that who knew what this horse was going to grow up to do. It wasn't worth anything. Won a bunch of races. Now it's worth millions. And they said, we don't need the money. Let's gift the horse to NCF before we sell it. Now they've got millions of dollars to give away from this racehorse. So literally any appreciated asset that you can think of could be leveraged for generosity. We just need to explore it. So
that's fantastic.
I know I heard a story regarding dairy cows at one point as well.
So we did that one recently. We had 250,000 of pigs here recently. So all kinds of stuff that you can leverage for the generosity.
Bringing back the Ohio farm context. Okay.
That's good.
That was fun. Well, you alluded to this. I'm going to rewind just a smidge. So you said everything sort of started in Atlanta. Just a little bit of history, because there may be some names that some of the folks that are listening or watching have heard before, or their parents or grandparents have heard, because this has been around a while. Yeah. And just so who are some of the names that helped get this thing started?
Yeah. So 1982, Larry Burkett.
Where were you in 82? Were you in Zimbabwe? I don't know where you were.
I was 6 years from birth. This is when
I feel really old. You were wow. Why do I ask these things?
I have no idea.
I was Well, you weren't.
My oldest brothers were 2. If that helps.
All right. Oh. I was in junior high, but nevertheless.
You were young, David. You're young.
Never asking that again.
So Larry Burkett, who, if you don't know Larry's name, written a number of books, but he's kind of the father of modern biblical financial principles and church content and curriculum. He and Howard Dayton were contemporaries, did a lot of work together. So Larry Burkett, Ron Blue and Company, Ron Blue Trust, Kingdom Advisors, Ron Blue Institute. So Ron Blue was kind of the CPA. Larry Burkett was kind of a biblical finance. And then you had Terry Parker, who was an attorney. And these guys independently were getting similar questions all the time, either from the donor or from the ministry. But the donor, how do I leverage my farm to support the ministry? How do I leverage my business to support how do I leverage my real estate? But unless they had an attorney that was specific in those areas that could walk them through, there wasn't a great vehicle or a pathway to get this. So those guys came together and they said, we got to create a vehicle. And really, we want this to be a conduit from the donor to the 501c3 that the donor wants to support. What we don't want is for this to be a cistern. And maybe that's a good differentiation conversation about NCF from some other donor advised funds. Because really, at the end of the day, the tool, the donor advised fund tool, is the same at NCF versus Fidelity Charitable or Schwab Charitable. What's different is the heart that we bring to it and the way that we implement some of those strategies, some of the things that we will do strategically that some others won't do. But specifically, we are a conduit, not a cistern. We want to see those dollars flow through NCF to the ministries that are being supported.
And the cistern idea is we're not just trying to accumulate.
Exactly right. Yeah. This is not an assets under management. We're not trying to, yeah, exactly right. Yep. So we want to have impact we want to facilitate, but we want to have impact on the kingdom through NCF. Yeah.
Okay. That's super cool. So those names hopefully will be familiar to some. Yep. I mean, this is unfair, but like a name that people may know. So like Dave Ramsey, there probably wouldn't be a Dave Ramsey if there hadn't been a Larry Burkett, right?
There you go.
I don't know if Dave would agree with that, but it's probably true.
Standing on the shoulders of giants.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So just for context, like that's the world that this came out of.
Yep.
And it's been a long time.
Yep.
You mentioned conduit, would you say it was a conduit, not a cistern?
Not a cistern. There you go. Yeah.
So I've seen some numbers recently. Can you share some of like a sort of what that output or that outflow or the impact has been? It's like since 82, it's a gigantic number.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the last 40 years, I'll even share one other real quick piece. Since I've been with NCF in the last 4.5 years, it's been really fun because I feel like we've kind of hit a hockey stick moment. So in the last 80 years,
and for people that may not be finance folks, that just means
thank you.
That means that we were at the base of the hockey stick and then it went up. That doesn't mean we're hit with the hockey stick, and it doesn't mean the hockey stick was upside down.
The hockey stick was a chart.
So this is the hockey stick.
Yeah, exactly right. We've gone vertical in the last few years.
There we go. We've gone vertical.
In a great way.
Right.
So total grants to 501c3 for the last 40 years has been $16.7 billion with a B. So we're having a lot of impact. The largest Christian granting and gifting organization in the world.
So that's what NCF is.
NCF
Let's just
correct.
Say that one more time. This is the largest.
Yeah, National Christian Foundation is the largest Christian gifting and grant-making organization in the world. Yep. So that's $16.7 billion over the course of those 40 years. I mean, you think about the kingdom impact that has been had out of those dollars that generous donors, again, we're just the conduit. It's the donor that uses the strategies to be a good steward of what they've been entrusted to then send those dollars through NCF out to the ministries they want to support, right? So that $16.7 billion has been having a lot of impact. What's really fun for us about that is this year, in fact, I had it pulled up just a moment ago, but it was $2.1 billion in 2022, right? So if it's $16.7 billion over the course of those 40 years, we're very quickly climbing that vertical hockey stick moment at $2 billion last year, and we've got some pretty ambitious goals. We want to continue to see God work through NCF in some pretty amazing ways. So,
fantastic.
Yeah. I guess as we kind of wrap this up, we're kind of heading towards the end of this episode. Would love to hear some examples of just how you've seen God use NCF in the lives of a donor.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite story to share?
Yeah, happy to. And maybe I'll lead with this, and this kind of goes back to the appetite for generosity. What we see is that oftentimes there is as much, if not more, impact in the life of the giver as there is in the life of the end user that will ultimately receive the grants from the giver, right? And I think that's because giving draws us closer to the giver, right? We created in the image of God. We have this generous spirit already indwelt that, man, when we feed that, we become more like the giver, something really beautiful happens. So I'll just start with that. And then that leads into a couple of really fun stories that we've seen. I'll give you one specific example. We had a family, a couple that was referred to us from a ministry. The ministry heard that this family was going to be selling their business. The family believed that the business was worth about $10 million. And they said, this family told us that they want to make a pledge to us out of the proceeds from that sale. We said, before you do anything, go have a conversation with NCF, because it sounds like there's an opportunity here for you to leverage this liquidation event. So we're so grateful that the ministry made that referral and that introduction. We were able to step in and have some really fun conversations. They were initially thinking tithe. So out of the $10 million, they were thinking we'll give a 10% gift. So we'll send $1 million and we'll spread that $1 million out amongst these different organizations that we're passionate about. And this one entity that referred them was one of these such organizations. Well, over the course of our conversation with this couple, what became really fun was automatically seeing their heart for generosity and their desire to leverage this business for impact. So we had a conversation with them very simply about kind of going back to the stock conversation. Hey, what if we could help you understand how to not just not just to sell the business and then give the cash, because here's all the tax ramifications and we'll walk them through the math. But if we switch those words and we simply do a give of the company first, and then we sell the company after you've gifted it into the donor advised fund, look at the impact, right? We've eliminated a 25% capital gains tax. You've gotten a higher tax deduction because you got the fair market value for your company, not the after tax of the net cash. So there's just a beautiful thing happens financially in the economics. Well, what was fun about this couple was we showed them those numbers, took about 45 minutes to walk them through that. And then we said, okay, real quick, just because we want you to see the impact, let's look at a 20% gift instead of 10. Well, what they realized was that their take home didn't go down that much. Because of the tax swing, their gift to charity went up significantly, but their take home, because of their personal tax benefit, didn't go down that much. So they said, well, why would we not do that? So we moved forward with a 20% gift, and here's where God enters into the story, this was really fun. And this is not I want to be careful, this is not a prosperity gospel. They made this commitment beforehand. This was not a if-then, right, type of a...
Right. Well, there's never a one-to-one.
Exactly.
That's not the way God works.
Yep. So along the way, the potential buyer enters into the conversation, and they started saying, well, these numbers don't make sense. We can't, your profit margins are unheard of in this industry. And she said, well, here's the QuickBooks, and here's some more information. And finally, she said, here's the password. Just go look it up. But I'm telling you, you're not going to find the answer in the numbers. And they said, well, what do you mean by that? She said, we gave this company to God a long time ago. We entrusted it to him. He has blessed it. We can't explain the margins either, but we knew he was going to do something like this, and we're just grateful that he did it through us. It was just a fun story. So then what happened was the buyer ended up, instead of paying $10 million for the company, ended up purchasing it for $24 million. So their 20% gift, where they were thinking they would initially have about $1 million to give away, they ended up having $4.5 million in their donor advised fund that they were able to give away for charity. Wow. And it was just fun to be a part of it. Oh my goodness. And then to have the conversations on the back end with them saying, no, what do we do with $4.5 million? We have no, we thought we had a plan for $1 million. We don't know what to do with $4.5. It's so fun to partner with.
And so you advise them then to listen to the Giving Room podcast to help coach them on where, I'm just kidding. Yeah. But that's awesome, Chris. And we're thrilled to have you here. And thank you for sharing all this. And again, National Christian Foundation, a fantastic resource. If you're looking for ways to give generously, to learn about different tools and resources, to give more generously, to give less to taxes and more to charity. They are an amazing resource to do that. So wanted to say thank you again for being part of this. Again, we'll have more information about the NCF. You can find their website in the description here. You can learn more about the Giving Room Podcast at givingroompodcast.com. And again, we're so thankful that you're here today. So yeah,
and I think in there, when you go to the NCF link that we'll provide in the notes and in the comments, you can actually find the Chris equivalent wherever you are, right? So I even ask you, I think, where you are, and it'll sort of direct you that way. So it's real easy to find the folks that can help you wherever you are. So
thanks for hanging out with us today here in the Giving Room. Have a great time. We'll see you next time. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen, and we'll look forward to seeing you again soon.
The Giving Room podcast is brought to you by Giving Design LLC, where we help ministries and their donors utilize planned giving to change the world. Go to givingdesign.com to learn more. As always, a huge thank you to River Radio Ministries for sponsoring and producing this podcast. Go to riverradio.com to listen or learn more.